The question of why Russia didn't colonize Africa isn't just one simple answer. It's comprised of many things, and that's what we're going to be exploring today. First, I just want to look at the Russian attempts at colonizing other places other than Africa, and that would be North America and Asia. First, we're going to look at Russian Asia at Port Arthur. It's today known as Lushenkow, and this is in modern-day China. And in 1898, the Russians were able to lease the port from China for a bit, and the Russians renamed it Port Arthur. But when the Russo-Japanese War broke out, it became an easy target for Japan to take, and that they did. And that was in 1905, during the Battle of Port Arthur. Although the Russians did try and take it again during the Siege of Port Arthur the same year, which lasted into 1906, but it failed, and it eventually became the longest and bloodiest battle of the whole Russo-Japanese War. Then there's Russian Tenzin, which is modern-day Tianjin, as you can see on the map. The Russians leased out this part of the city of Tianjin, but it is then known as Tenzin, from 1900 to 1924. And also, this city, Tianjin, was leased out not just by Russia, but by many other powers such as Japan, Belgium, France, Britain, America, and a few others. And Russia held some territory here in the Russian Quarter, as you can see on the map. And they held it up until 1924, when most countries that owned part of the city ceded it back to China. And then, here's an actual attempt that the Russians sort of made. It's all very technical, and I'll tell you why soon. When they tried to, quote-unquote, colonize Africa. Nikolai Ashanov led a group of Terek Cossacks, which was a group of people on the northern side of the Caspian and around the Caucasus that were basically a paramilitary group that were Greek Orthodox. And Nikolai Ashanov had been planning for this for quite a bit. And in 1888, he set sail for Djibouti in hope that he could establish relations with Ethiopia, because Djibouti is just north of Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is also a Orthodox country. And so Russia tried to establish relations with them in another time, but in this particular thing, as they tried to settle, this was not funded by the Russian government. And this was just a guy who led a group of 165 settlers to move to Djibouti. They arrived there in early 1889, established a fort that they called Novaya Moskva, which is now Sigalo in Djibouti, although this is Russian for New Moscow. The French found out because at this time the French did own Djibouti, and the French found out and basically said, well, we're being invaded by these Russian guys. And so they sent 3 gunboats and destroyed the fort, killing 6 and wounding 22. They eventually left on a Russian steamboat, going back home to Russia. Now, this was not funded by the Russian government, but the Russian government had thought about establishing a foothold in Ethiopia because they were both Orthodox countries, so they may get along well. Like during the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, Russia promised to supply Ethiopia in this war, in exchange that Ethiopia would allow them to establish a colony and have a road, maintain a camel route from the Red Sea to Harar. Although the Russians only supplied them when the war was basically lost, and so this really did nothing. But there's also another time that the Russians tried to take an African nation, and this was when, during the reign of Tsar Peter I, or normally known as Peter the Great, had a scheme to take Madagascar. But due to how far it was, and how little they knew about Madagascar, they never did. And that's basically all they did in Africa. Although they did successfully colonize Alaska from when they first spotted it in 1732 to when they sold it to America in 1867. They established multiple settlements, and they established many missions too, which was one of their main focuses, is to convert the natives to Orthodoxy. And it worked, but it just really wasn't paying off. And they also established forts and trading posts in Hawaii, and they established Fort Ross in Northern California near San Francisco. They eventually just gave these to other nations, though, and it didn't bring them much money. And now let's get down to the reason why they didn't establish colonies in Africa. Well, they attended the Berlin Conference, but they basically said, well, you can attend, but you're not getting anything out of this. And the Russians didn't, as they said, and I don't honestly think the Russians really wanted to get anything out of this. Maybe come away with some land. To get to Africa, they would either need to pass through the Black Sea and go through Constantinople, but that was owned by the Ottomans, which was Russia's mortal enemy. So that was never happening. But they could have just went north across Asia or across Europe and just gotten there. Yes, they could have, but this would have taken forever, and it just really would not be worth it at that point. And they also were involved in colonizing the portions that they owned. So yes, they took land from the Pacific Ocean to the Arctic Ocean, and they owned it, but they didn't really have it settled. There are many tribes still living there, and it's a wild wilderness, not tamed. And so they were working on that. So they couldn't go start some other colonies in another continent when they haven't even worked at home. And that's basically the reason why they didn't colonize Africa, because they were too caught up in other things. And although they did try, it was a pretty weak attempt. Well, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and comment, and share this with a friend. If they haven't listened, share it with an enemy. Also, check out History of Spriggs on Facebook at just History of Spriggs, or check out my Discord server at History of Spriggs server. And with that being said, Spriggs out.